Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I didn't even bother to take this thing out of the frame before I brought it in because it is pretty much filling up the entire film space that I currently use without adjusting a whole lot of things. This is a gaming laptop, and I introduced it as that because in 2010 when this was made, this was what people thought of when they thought of gaming laptops. They're huge, they're bulky, they're unwieldy, the power adapter, Xbox 360-esque. At any rate, this is supposed to be the definition of portable gaming. Gaming perhaps, portable it is not. This thing weighs just over 3.7 kilograms, not including the power adapter, and it is pretty darn thick indeed. In fact, let's find out exactly how thick this thing is using science. Now, as I do this, I want to make one thing very clear. Gaming laptops have come a very, very long way over the last 10 years. And thank goodness. Because if you think about what people like to do with gaming laptops, it's mostly, portable gaming. So 51.21 millimeters or about 5 centimeters thick. And I haven't had the opportunity to, say, really try any 2019 gaming laptops, but I can tell you one thing, they don't have to make them this thick anymore. Oh my goodness. So let's just do a quick tour. We've got a Blu-ray player over here. We got two USB 2 or 3.0 ports. I think those might be 2. On the back, we have 2 Kensington locks because, hey, if there's only one Kensington lock, somebody might actually try and steal this thing if they brought a truck. You have your 2 exhaust fans here. They're actually a lot smaller than they really look. They're about half the size of those grills. Moving over here, we have a dedicated headphone jack, dedicated mic jack, a USB 2.0, USB 3.0, HDMI, VGA, network, and your power plug. And on the front, they are hiding an SD card reader as well as some indicator lights. If we open this thing up, we can go through the rest of the specifications. The display up here is actually a full HD 15.6-inch LED backlit screen, so it's not terrible. This is before they really started to care about refresh rates on gaming laptops, so pardon that I don't have that information available to you. We are looking at a backlit keyboard, and it is pretty much essential to use it because if you haven't noticed, at certain angles you can't actually read the keys unless they're being backlit. You have a very small trackpad because, let's face it, if you are buying a gaming laptop, you have a gaming mouse, you're not going to be using this. The buttons, though, are nice and clicky and very responsive, and the key travel is actually pretty comfortable. I could type on this, I think, for a while without getting too terribly tired, which is good to know. In terms of specifications, we are rocking an Intel Core i7 740QM, and inside we also have an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 460M. A couple of other things to note, this did come from the factory with a 500GB hard disk, 6 gigabytes of memory is to say about this unit. There's also a web camera up there with a dual microphone array, but meh. Okay, so let's start a disassembly of this. First off, there is no easily accessible maintenance manual for this particular laptop. However, there are several guides online, and the fact that there is no manual available, and when the person gave it to me, kind of chuckled when they started talking about me taking it apart, I suspected that there was a few shenanigans to be afoot. Now, the first thing that we'll note is when we actually flip this over, there are no screws to be seen poking their heads up anywhere. So that usually means that you're going in through the keyboard. Before we do that, of course, we do need to remove this incredibly massive battery. This battery actually is a lot more capacity than you might think. It's 5200 milliamp or 75 watt hours, and normally you see batteries laid out as thin as possible, so when you see this one, which is approximately the size of your favorite beverage can, in fact it might be, hold on, not bad. Beverage cans aside, now that we have the battery removed, we can go ahead safely with our disassembly. Now to begin, we're going to flip this back over and open up our lid. And we are looking for these 5 little tabs located at the top of the keyboard. I'll just adjust the camera so you can see these. There's one right there. And they do say that a flathead screwdriver might be required. I'm going to try and use my plastic card first and see if I can get it to cooperate. I can already see why they said this was going to be so much fun. You do want to be careful with those tabs, because of course if they snap, your keyboard isn't going to sit properly. We'll use the card to wedge up the keyboard. Like so. Oh, there we go. So we're just going to go ahead and sit that in there. Now that we've got tension, that's one more tab. And then I'll zoom back out so you can see this process. And then there's the last tab right there. There are 2 ribbon cables underneath. One, of course, is for the actual keyboard input. The other one is to power the backlight. With our keyboard removed, and by the way, I really have to tell you that when this is not backlit, depending on the angle, the keycaps are practically unreadable. Now that we have that off, we can see one of our RAM modules hanging out here. There is a RAM module located just where my finger is beneath that shielding. However, it requires the disassembly of the entire screen, top case, and pretty much the rest of the laptop to get to, and I kind of said, you know what, no thanks for this one. I believe the other one is probably on the other side of the board, because it just seems to be one of those setups. There is a 3M tape here, but it doesn't look like it's been deployed. I hope that that's not there to secure our keyboard, because that would be very disappointing indeed. So to continue the disassembly, we do need to remove this palm rest. There is a screw here that you need to remove, and then there's this bar that essentially slides with some encouragement this way and that. So in this position, the screw is there and it's locked. What you need to do is remove that screw, take your screwdriver, and then unlock it like that. Once you've done that, the whole palm rest can actually pop up. Now, once it has popped up, you do need to remove this ribbon cable to make sure that the palm rest can be pulled away from the chassis safely. So we'll just do that by gently walking that connector out, like so. And it's worth noting that the connector feeds up and under the chassis. So with that removed, which has some deliciously clicky buttons, if something can be described as deliciously clicky. At this point, we have all of these screws that we have to remove before we can actually open the bottom plate, which seems a little strange, but that's how this machine has been constructed. Okay, so we've gone ahead and removed all the screws that are labeled M2.5x7. Those should be the only ones required to remove the bottom plate. So we're going to go ahead and close the lid, and we're going to flip this over. And as you can see, the lid happily comes off. Now, on the inside here, we have a couple of things waiting for us. We have 2 additional RAM slots. It is also worth pointing out that if you want to remove your optical drive, you need to remove this screw here. Why this wasn't immediately available through the entire chassis, I cannot even begin to guess. But there it is, our Blu-ray player in this case. Just yanked that out. And once that's out, we can start to see that the structural integrity is mixed, shall we say. At any rate, we can now access all the guts that we would normally want to service on a machine like this. So we've got 2 2.5 standard hard drive bays, and you can see that they actually share a board right between the 2 of them that they're both plugged into. Thank goodness, even though one is underneath the trackpad, you don't have to disassemble that whole upper case. And then we have another hard drive hanging out here. Up here we can see all of our heat pipe systems for our fans, which are back here. If I didn't mention it, the Wi-Fi card's over there. So in terms of disassembly to service and upgrade, that's really all you would need to do. So it's not the worst machine to get into. Thank goodness that the tolerance and clips are, very flexible, doesn't require a whole lot of effort to get too far into anything in this machine. And that is a relief. So if you want to put in that second hard disk, if it didn't come with it, you can very easily. At this point, I'm pretty much going to put this back together because the cooling system is just hanging out here, and that's not really why we take these things apart. So let's reassemble it and then just go through the last few pieces. So after waiting almost half an entire day here for this thing to charge, we're at 84% and it says it has another hour and a half to go. I figured, okay, fine, good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and yank the plug on that and dial it down to battery saver. And we'll give it a little bit to see if it can do a calculation on how long exactly that'll last running this. And while we're doing that, let's talk about the longevity of machines of this era. There isn't. And that is unfortunate because these are often, or at least they were during that time, significant investments. They had discrete GPUs, they had very good CPUs, lots of RAM, lots of storage, lots and lots and lots of. But if you take a look at a modern Ultrabook U style processor and a GTX even 1050 graphics card, it can outperform it. And you might say, well, that's kind of a foregone conclusion. There's about 10 years of innovation. And you know what? Totally fair. But I'm talking about looking at this retrospectively, as the channel implies. That being said, I would not be in a huge rush to go out and get someone's old gaming laptop. It's going to get about 2 hours of battery life. If you're not taking the charger with you, you're not really using this for any extensive amount of time, and that's on battery saver mode, it's sitting here doing nothing. So in terms of power efficiency, not really there, and it's not necessarily a computer that I would be running out to get. If I wanted something like this, I would build a desktop and be pretty happy with it. And I understand that's not the situation for everybody, but it is one of the things you need to consider if you are purchasing these larger gaming laptops, even in 2019. Maybe not the best use of your money, depending on your scenario and your use case. Anyway, I've rambled long enough. Hopefully you've enjoyed me taking a look at this behemoth of a old school gaming laptop. If you enjoy this sort of content, there are the big four at the bottom here. Please like the video, share it, subscribe, and of course click that notification bell so you know when the next video is coming out. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time. And while we're at it, let's try... Oh, if you try and turn it on without charging it, even a little bit, it just can't.